There is much gloom surrounding the Genestealer Cult Codex at the moment, when only a few days ago we were very happy with the detachments that we got. The unit entries overall are not looking great, I know, and the difference between the Sisters of Battle unit entries and the Genestealer Cult is night and day. Have you seen how good the Imagifier is? I had a debate at the start of the edition if the Imagifier or Hospitaller were better, and it took me a month of playing to get out of the expectation from 9th edition with loads of armor penetration that would require an invulnerable save, and then I could relax into the feel no pain of the Hospitaller. Well, the Imagifier is so much better, not only providing that invulnerable save, but also changing the armor save of whatever unit she joins to a 2+. Regular Sisters of Battle with a 2+ armor save. Oh, that's good. And the Hospitaller as well has got a lot better, as I mentioned in this video. But another time for the Sisters. So last week, we thought that 5 Genestealer Cult detachments was better than the 4 Sisters detachments, and now we think that generally the Codex entries are better for the Sisters than the Genestealer Cult, but we have yet to see the points. There are some points in the Codex, but they may get changed when the next balance patch comes, or shortly after the codexes are released. So soon, we may see loads of points drops for Genestealer Cult units and higher points for the Sisters, and the feelings may switch again. That is the theme for today. Reversal of fortunes, but also so that you can understand my mind and how I work. Thinking back to the start of the edition, people were raving over the Genestealer Cult being super OP and going on about the bikes and their absurd number of explosion mortal wound things, and I didn't care about any of that. I was the weird Genestealer Cult player in the corner, prodding the Metamorphs to try and get them to do something good. I tried putting them in a cult truck to make the truck scout, and then they would jump out with hand flamers re-rolling to wound. It sort of worked, but the index detachment rule wanted you to come from deep strike and shoot, which didn't gel well with the vehicle tactics. I tried scouting onto objectives at the start of the game, but pure strains can infiltrate, so they do it better. And if you have access to Brood Brothers, then Catachans can do it cheaper. So I tried combat attacks and charging in with Metamorphs, but the issue was that Acolyte Hybrids with mining tools, the way that people didn't take Acolyte Hybrids, that was better than the Metamorphs. At the start of the edition, Acolytes were cheaper than Metamorphs. Acolytes are battle line. In the index, this let them return by cult ambush much easier. The Acolytes have an offensive unit ability. They get to reroll wound rolls. Metamorphs were defensive. They get to fight on death if they haven't already fought, which is usually not going to happen if you're the one charging in, which is what I want to do. Acolytes could have really powerful mining weapons, which the Metamorphs could not, and an Acolyte had objective control too, so they could hold objectives much better than the Metamorphs. All of these reasons are why Metamorphs were bad in the index, and why I didn't make a dedicated video on them showing off their best qualities and how to make them work. I was determined to get the worst unit, besides the Magos, to work. And now that they're good, I've lost interest. Kidding. Let's get our weird mutant on and explore the Metamorphs. In Codex Genestealer Cult 10th edition, unnecessary hash symbol we will rise. Their stat line is the same as the Acolyte Hybrids, both kinds of Acolyte Hybrids. They move 6 inches, their toughness 4, 5+ save, 1 wound, leadership 7+, but the difference is the Acolytes are still objective control 2, while the Hybrid Metamorphs are objective control 1. This is despite both the Metamorphs and all the Acolyte kinds being made out of the same box. What I would have done if I was Games Workshop splitting up the unit is say, okay, we have the shooting kind of Acolyte with the hand flamers and the demolition charges, then we have the Hybrid Metamorphs, which are the combat version which get the mining tools. Then you still have 2 units, one for shooting, one for combat, and you don't need to faff on with, oh, there's 3 kinds, but one of them's a bit tougher, one of them's shootier, and one of them's got the big tools. But I'm okay with the rules that we got. Hybrid Metamorphs are the tougher version. They still have their scout 6 inches, they still have deep strike as they're a Genestealer Cult unit. All of our infantry can do that deep strike. So if you want them on the board, they can be on the board but further up than everyone else. And scout is done after the roll for first turn. So you put them out in the open. If you're going first, great, you scout forward towards the enemy. If you're not going first, you may be able to scout them 6 inches behind some cover and out of line of sight. It's a useful ability. Then to make them more resilient, a 5+ feel no pain. Now we're embracing our tougher mutanty side. They still have Cult Ambush, as do all the Genestealer Cult infantry units. Not characters, but the Cult Ambush has changed, so there's no longer a worse version for the Metamorphs compared to the Acolytes, because there is no longer the +1 if you are a battle line unit. So Metamorphs will return on a 4+ in the first and second battle round, or on a 5+ in the third, fourth and fifth battle round. So we can deep strike with the Metamorphs, and there are a lot of tools in the different detachments to make them better coming from deep strike, like making sure that they pass their charge. But if you want them on the table, that's where they can use their Scout 6 inches ability, and also where Broodsurge comes more into effect. You see, each time an enemy shoots at your Metamorphs, if any Metamorphs were killed, then you get to make a Broodsurge move. If you're familiar with Khorne Berserkers, that's a Blood Surge move. It generally gets called a Surge move. And the Chaos Accursed Cultists have a similar rule. But there's a bonus for the Metamorphs. Yes, so you move d6 inches, and you have to move as close as possible to the nearest enemy unit, but not aircraft, and you can get into engagement range as part of that. You won't count as having charged, but this shooting attack is happening in the enemy turn. Usually. Overwatch is the exception. That means that as you are the non-active player, you will get to fight first with the Metamorphs in the combat phase, because neither unit is charged, neither your unit nor the one that was shooting at you. So it's the non-active player who gets to pick the unit first to fight with. So your Metamorphs will be fighting first in that case. There's an extra part to this, but I'll get back to it in a second. The war gear that the Metamorphs have include the cult icon. There is a change to the cult icon. It used to be that you could bring back some models in the reinforcement step of the movement phase. That was okay, but now we can bring them back in the command phase. You get D3 models back, and if you're on an objective, you get 3 models back. Oh, and there's a little clarification for the Acolytes with demolition charges that they don't get their one-shot weapons back. Good to have that. Finally, after a year, there's the definitive ruling. Otherwise, my FAQ has been helping people along as we go. And that covers all the other instances where you get or don't get demolition charges back, and it is Codex compatible. So you get the models back in the command phase, which is when a lot of objectives are scored. This means that if you don't quite hold an objective, then you can bring back some Metamorphs and oh look, now you have just enough objective control to hold that objective. You can't quite chain out the models in a long line, because even though that would be in unit coherency for say a small unit of 5 that's bringing back 3 models, all of the models have to be within unit coherency of a model that was there at the start of the turn. So if you're just out by like 2 inches from an objective that no one is on, you will be able to place 1 Metamorph there. But if you were 4 or 5 inches out, you can't place Metamorphs in a line to get to that objective. It's still an improvement. And you need to remember that the Codex isn't all worse than the Index. This is one of the improvements. All the Metamorphs are armed with Metamorph mutations. This is a really good weapon because it has 2 fighting modes. If you're fighting lots of hoardy things like 1 wound Imperial Guardsmen, then every model can have 5 attacks, hitting on a 3, wounding on a 3, and with -1 armor penetration to do 1 damage. That's good. If you're fighting Space Marines, then you can do the strike version. 3 attacks, hitting on a 3, strength 5 means you're wounding on a 3, -1 armor penetration and 2 damage to instantly kill those Space Marines. If you use the right attack against the right enemy, it works. And this is an advantage that they have over, say, Acolytes, who only have the damage 1 version of their cult claws. One of the Metamorphs is a leader and has leader's bioweapons. This is often represented with a bone sword and a whip. It doesn't have to be, but that's how it's most often represented. Theirs is the best of both versions. You get 5 attacks at the strike profile. So that's 2 more than normal. The pistols are a bit more of a difficult choice. While the Acolytes are split into Acolytes with auto pistols and Acolytes with hand flamers, the Metamorphs still have the choice of which one. Now you may be thinking, oh well, duh, obviously I'm going to go for the hand flamer, which is the same range, same profile, but I get D6 shots rather than 1 and they auto hit. There's a drawback. Or maybe it's better to think of, there's a bonus if you go the all-auto pistol route. And that's with the Broodsurge. See, if all of the models in your unit have auto pistols, then when you make those Broodsurge movements, you're not going D6 inches, you're going 6 inches. Every single time. So for each enemy unit that destroys a model, you get to move that 6 inches. That can mean your Metamorphs are going incredibly fast up the board. If it would draw you like into a building so you could be shot by even more units and you didn't want that, remember that the rule is you can make a Broodsurge move. You don't have to. But if you choose to, then you have to move as far as possible towards the closest enemy unit. I like this version. It's the combat version, it gets you up into the fight as soon as possible, and the enemy will often not be expecting that the unit that's 11 inches away is charging in their own turn as soon as they've shot them with 2 different units. If you're thinking instead, okay, I'm not going to go the Broodsurge combat route, I'm going to think about deep strike, I'm going to think about having them in a truck, then yes, swap as many as you can to have hand flamers rather than auto pistols. Then you get more shots, they ignore cover, they automatically hit. It's more shooting abilities, but I'm thinking of this as a combat-focused unit. I'm going to go auto pistols, but there is one more drawback to going all auto pistols. You can't have a cult icon, because you can see that one Metamorph's auto pistol is replaced with a cult icon, and it's only if every model in the unit has an auto pistol that you get to do the Broodsurge move set at 6 inches. So that's something to consider. Do you want a couple of models coming back, assuming that you're not wiped out in one go, and then you also get hand flamers? Or do you want to be surging up the board? I want to do that one. Because even if you only make a single 6-inch move, and the enemy's like, oh, okay, that's got you way closer than I was wanting. I'm not going to shoot you with anything else. You're 6 inches closer for your own turn when you can move and then charge, and you're much more likely to make that charge when you're moving 6 inches. Another thing to factor in is I don't have enough banner models for all of the Metamorphs and the Acolyte versions. So someone's going to not have a banner. That's just how my collection's worked out. Metamorphs get an advantage to not having the cult icon. Great, I'll go with them. Metamorphs come in units of 5 or 10, and because we can Broodsurge after we lose some models, you're going to want as many models in the squad as possible so that you still have enough alive to kill the enemy when you get into combat. Right, let's talk about the best characters to run with this unit. The character you pick will heavily depend on the detachment that you choose. That's something to bear in mind, but some of the characters are more general for any detachment. The Primus is doing the same thing for them as always, letting them reroll hit rolls. However, the Metamorphs hit on 3+. Yes, having a reroll on that means that you're going to get most of, if not almost all of your hits into the enemy. But consider the army as a whole. The Primus is much better placed to help those who need a bit more supervision. The 5+ to hit demolition charge acolytes, the 4+ to hit neophytes, we need the Primus elsewhere. So consider all of your army as a whole, not just the wants of your new favorite unit. The Magus has changed and improved, which I'll talk about another time, but none of their abilities are necessary for Metamorphs. Then there's the Icon Ward. Oh, they desperately want you to put the Icon Ward with the Metamorphs, because the Icon Ward now has Scout 6 inches. It did always annoy me that whenever you put a character with the Metamorphs, that meant that Scout doesn't work. That is the Scout rule. Every model in the unit has to have Scout in order to be able to Scout. Now we have a character that Scouts, so you're pressured into putting the Icon Ward in your Metamorphs. You don't have to. We already have a 5+ feel no pain naturally to the unit now. Having the Icon Ward makes it a 4+ feel no pain. That's a significant boost in resistance. But if you have an Icon Ward, That may be an ability that's more useful in other units, like Neophytes. A massive unit of 20 Neophytes with Feel No Pain is going to be very difficult to get rid of. Again, think of the army, not just the Metamorphs. But in certain detachments, you know which one, an Icon Ward is a brilliant choice. And don't worry, they come with an auto pistol, so you can still do your maximum speed Broodsurge. The Magos also has a pistol, the Primus doesn't, and this is where the rules get a bit annoying, because that character model will be a model in the unit. So if you're not adding a character that has an auto pistol, then you're not getting your automatic 6-inch Broodsurge. Most of the characters do have an auto pistol, but it's something else you need to consider. The Biophagus is a character that has an auto pistol. Once per game, they can give you +1 to wound when attacking an infantry unit. That is changed to how it was previously, where once per game you got to automatically wound on a 2+. In most cases, it's going to be the same thing, because when I was reading out the characteristics, most of the time we're wounding on a 3+, this gives you +1, so you'll be wounding on a 2+. It's almost but not quite the same. And that's once per game. So if you really need to wipe out an enemy unit, the Biophagus can make your Metamorphs that frontline super crush killer. And the benefit of the Biophagus is the unit always has lethal hits. So if you were fighting a tank, then you could try and bring it down by going for the many sweep attacks. 5 attacks per model with lethal hits could do some damage if the enemy tank is on a low enough wound number. The Clamavus can also go with the Metamorphs, but he doesn't want to be dragged to the fight. No, wait, he does. That's really funny. Annoy the enemy as the voice of new truth surges forward. The Clamavus should go in the back. The Locust would go in the front, but the Locust doesn't have an auto pistol. Bear that in mind. The Locust grants the unit fight first, so that means that you will always get fight first. So if they charge, well, as per the normal rules, you fight first. If you Broodsurge, you are doing so in the enemy turn, you activate first. And now, with the Locust, if you get charged, you fight first. Something else to consider is that this is a cheap character, at least at the time of recording, and if you just want a particular enhancement for the unit, this is the guy to go for. The Nexus has auto pistol. There are several good stratagems that are battle tactics across the detachments. But you're taking him because you really want that one particular thing, probably going to be using it on turn 2 when a lot of your units are coming from deep strike. That's where we often use most stratagems. The Metamorphs can also be joined by the new Benefictus model, but that would be granting us lethal hits for shooting. That is pointless on the auto-hitting hand flamers, and near pointless on the few auto pistols. Oh, and the Benefictus doesn't come equipped with an auto pistol himself. I have a separate review already for the Benefictus and the best units for them to join. And something to consider for all the characters, if you want someone to act as a bodyguard, the Metamorphs are better than Acolytes, because they now have a 5+ Feel No Pain built in. So we're outperforming the Acolytes in a lot of situations now. But the characters you want to include with them is detachment dependent. Before I talk about the detachments, I also want to compare the Metamorphs to the Aberrants, the previous favourite monster mutant unit of the community. The Aberrants got quite a bit of a nerf. Their Feel No Pain has been reduced to 5+, so it's on par with the Metamorphs. But they can't be joined by an Icon Ward to get a 4+ Feel No Pain. The Aberrants have no weapon options anymore, no weapon choices between picks and hammers or even a road sign, nothing like that, and the Aberrants have no shooting attack. Their hammers, their standard weapon, have been toned way back. They're now strength 7, meaning you don't wound Marines on a 2+, it's on a 3+, the same as what Metamorphs wound them on. Aberrants have been reduced to causing damage 2, not damage 3. The Metamorph leader is always causing damage 2 in combat, and the others can also strike to cause damage 2. Aberrants can't get through hordes very well, but Metamorphs can switch it up to sweep and use loads of attacks to get through them. Aberrants have been brought down to Metamorph level, but we'll have to see what the points are. I still expect the Aberrants to cost a bit more than Metamorphs. So if you're thinking, Aberrants? What? No, I've never heard of them. My mutant friend is called Metamorph. Oh, but what about Big Hammer Lady? We can't forget Big Hammer Lady. The Abominant doesn't give lethal hits anymore. Now she gives the Metamorphs previous fight on death, but a worse version. How the table turns. No, the turns are played on the game table. I plan on running the Abominant alone. She don't need no man. She has a big hammer. If you looked at the new Benefictus, and after seeing my review, which you should totally go and do now, maybe you thought, well, several Benefictus, big brain in a truck, or rock grinder seems like a lot of good las cannon shots. The Ben Bus is expensive though. So I don't recommend it, and you are not using the best part about him, the lethal hits in shooting. With 2 Beneficti, you get 4 las cannon shots if you go the hazardous mode. Or go with the Big Hammer Lady. With no hazardous, she swings with those same 4 attacks and hits on a 3+. I bet she doesn't cost more than 2 bends, and with the current points, she's cheaper than even one of them. She's tougher, and her unit ability is not a massive loss to not be used. If she goes down, she stands back up. Oh, I heard the bell. I chose to keep on fighting. This woman is an inspiration, in her denim overalls. But this is a Metamorph video, so let's get back to them and talk about detachments. Which detachments do you use with the Metamorphs, and how do you use the Metamorphs in each detachment? The Biosanctic Broodsurge is where you upset the Aberrants by being taken instead of them. If you add a Biophagous character to the unit, then the Metamorphs get the detachment rule. They lose their scout, but they get +1 to their attacks, both profiles, and +1 to charge. Now they can come from reserve and fire their hand flamers and have an 8-inch charge rather than a 9-inch charge. I know a lot of you liked that from 9th edition. That Biophagous can be upgraded with an enhancement to have predatory instincts to infiltrate, and there you go, you have them all. Scout, Deep Strike, and Infiltrate. If you go alongside some pure strains, then you might be able to do a first turn charge, but if not, this enhancement also gives a free heroic intervention. If the faster pure strains failed their charge, or were charged because the enemy went first, you can save them, and you are more likely to be close to the enemy if you made a surge move from enemy shooting. The XenoCreed detachment is the most obvious one, but don't discount the others. If you think Metamorphs and XenoCreed, that doesn't mean they don't work in any other detachment, but if you wanted to focus your army around the Metamorphs like a mad lad, then this is the detachment you want. They're not battle line. Metamorphs are not battle line in this or any other detachment, so bear that in mind. You get to reroll advance and charge rolls with your Metamorphs. If you have auto pistols, you won't bother about shooting anyway. If you have flamers, there is a stratagem to let you shoot them after advancing if you wish. If the enemy killed that lone Abominant, even the once before she got back up, she counts as dead for rules purposes, for enemies scoring victory points and for stratagems and such. So we can use Vengeance for the Martyr to reroll hit rolls of 1. It's done better on a lone Magos who's died or a small squad, but I just wanted you to know that there is an exploit that lets you avenge the Abominant who is still standing there, only slightly worse for wear. If your Metamorphs run into a big group of enemies and you may not be able to take them out, Frenzied Devotion will give you +1 weapon skill and +1 attack. This is a battle tactic stratagem and a very good one. Now that's a bonus to either kind of profile, and now you're hitting on 2+ rather than 3+. The drawback is that it is hazardous, but if it gets you an objective or wipes out an enemy unit, it is worth it. I've never lost more than a couple of models to hazardous, and think about it. If the enemy wasn't wiped out because you weren't using this stratagem that gave you hazardous, surely the survivors would kill a couple of your models, and then the enemy unit would still be left alive. Better to drink the Skaven brew and frenzy the enemy to death. For enhancements, you could give a character with the unit Incendiary Inspiration to advance and charge, but that may not be necessary as there is a stratagem that lets you do that without needing a character to support. But in this detachment, you will want a character with the Metamorphs. Almost certainly the Cult Icon Ward. But you can use the stratagem if it's a unit of Metamorphs returning by Cult Ambush, in which case they will have no character, because the characters don't return when you use Cult Ambush. Denunciation of Tyrants is great on a character in this unit. You get +1 to attack and +1 to wound, and those are wonderful, as this can mean that the Metamorph unit is hitting and wounding their chosen target on a 2+. It only works if you're attacking unit with a character, that's an enemy unit that has the character keyword, but a lot of bigger enemy units have those characters. Massive Imperial Guard platoons as a single squad, large Space Marine squads, especially the Space Wolf kind, they have characters in them. And this is a unit that wants to attack enemy units, not lone vehicles and things, so this works. Actually, it will work against the vehicles of Morwen Val and Paragon Warsuits. Did you know that their unit rule has changed now and they are so much better? They can, okay, another time. The Host of Ascension is more of a shooting detachment, but it has some combat tricks to try out on your Metamorphs. I used to be very annoyed at the Metamorphs for having Scout when they also have Deep Strike. I felt that one of those unit rules was going wasted and I was paying for both of them. But now I can see that it makes them more versatile. So if you go for Deep Strike and use Our Time is Nigh once per game, you get +2 to the charge roll. That is a 7-inch charge from Deep Strike. And the detachment rule gives you sustained hits, shooting or in combat on the turn you came from Deep Strike. You should have enough attacks to thoroughly wipe out enemy infantry. I haven't got any special tactics with stratagems or enhancements for the Outlander Claw. For the units in this detachment, you will likely want Metamorphs in a truck. If all of the models inside can scout, so no Primus, no Biophagus, Icon Ward only, or taking the Metamorphs alone, that will let the cult truck scout. This sounds familiar to my video where I recommended this tactic. It's my big Genestealer Cult Tactics video. You can use the Hand Flamers from within the truck. Because of Scout and the fast movement of the cult truck, you can get across the board very quickly. You get onto an objective, you don't need to get the Metamorphs out because in the detachment, the truck has a higher objective control than normal, so it can hold the objective. If the truck blows up, your Metamorphs fall out, and if they start getting shot, they surge closer to the enemy units. So that's a tactic to consider. I don't really recommend having the Metamorphs in the Brood Brothers Auxilia detachment. This is a shooting detachment that improves hit rolls for shooting for your Genestealer Cult units after you fired with an Astra Militarum unit. It's not worth it for auto pistols and Hand Flamers auto hit. But there are things we can do. Hero Returned is an enhancement that will make the Metamorphs objective control 2. So they can be as good as the Acolyte Hybrids they otherwise look like. Gah. That's a face and a half. No. This is a face and a half. So like I say, they can work in this detachment, but it is not the best detachment for them. And stratagem sneakies. They can counter enemy deep strike near your deployment zone. The enemy drops in within 12 inches. You use a dark network to move 6 inches closer to them. If the enemy is then foolish enough to shoot your Metamorphs, you get a surge move. And this is why you want auto pistols. Because now you are in combat with them where you were previously 6 inches away. Brilliant. So I'm very happy with the Metamorphs. I am less happy with the Benefictus model, and my review for that is already here. As we learn more and more about the Genestealer Cults Codex, I will be giving you more information about different units, including what units have changed compared to their index version. There's a lot. It's almost a complete rework. I'll have that video soon enough. My darlings and viewers, have a great day of Metamorphs.